One, and you're live.
Good evening and welcome to this District Planning Committee meeting today, Wednesday the 5th of August 2026. My name's Councillor Maddie Thompson and I'm the Vice Chairman of this committee. In the absence of the Chairman, I will be chairing the meeting tonight, and Councillor Durham has kindly agreed to sit next to me to assist if necessary, particularly with counting. If any member objects to that, please speak now, otherwise I'll leave him in place. Thank you. Members, we're streaming this meeting live as well as recording, and by being present in the meeting, you are giving your consent to being recorded. During each item, please put your hand up to indicate if you wish to speak. I will then invite you at the appropriate time. Please note that the YouTube live stream sound recording is dependent on the correct use of microphones. Therefore, can I ask that when invited to speak, you remember to turn on your microphone and to turn it off when finished. Please reference a page or paragraph number when referring to the agenda papers and keep your contributions as clear and concise as possible. We do not have any fire alarm testing scheduled for today. However, we may have periodic fire alarms, and I remind members to ensure that they tap in and out when entering the council offices. If you hear the fire alarm, please exit using either of the two marked fire escape routes. Once out of the building, please proceed to the designated muster point located on the grass verge by the police station entrance. Item 2 is apologies for absence. May I have the apologies for absence, please, Mr. Bowles?
We have received apologies for absence from Councillors Bulkirk, Dodsley, Driver, Lagan, Lay, Laybourne, Neal, Pratt, Siddle, Stilt and Wine. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor Burrow-Cook asked me to make a point of saying that he is on mayoral duties this evening. That's why he can't be here. Right, item 3 is... Sorry, Councillor Paul Spenceley.
Thank you very much, Chair. I also had that apology from Councillor Burrow-Cook in case it hadn't been read, but just to point out that it also applies because it's Town Council to Councillor Dodsley, Councillor Driver and Councillor Lay.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 3 is the minutes. It's recommended that the minutes of the following meetings are approved as a true and accurate record. There's 25th of June found on pages 7 to 21 and the 8th of July found on pages 23 to 31. I so move. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Morgan, thank you.
Excuse me, could you turn the PA out? It's quite hard to hear for an old person at the back.
Of course, we will do our best. I think it's that one. Okay, testing.
There's nothing that will increase the sound of the speakers from in the room. That just has amplification through the desk units. There's no loudspeakers. The loudspeakers are there for the Teams participants.
Okay, thank you. I'll try and speak louder. Sorry, does any member have any questions of accuracy with the minutes? Can we agree them by assent, please?
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 4 is declarations of interest, to disclose the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interests, other registrable interests and non-registrable interests relating to items of business on the agenda, having regard to paragraph 9 and appendix B of the Code of Conduct for members, and members are reminded they're also required to disclose any such interest as soon as they become aware should the need arise to the meeting. Any declarations, members? No, that's none, Mr. Bowles, thank you. So we move to item 5, our planning application. That's land north of West Street, Tollesbury. Please note that as an addendum in relation to this application has been circulated prior to the meeting and is available on mod.gov. So Mr. Ball, who's the Principal Planning Officer, will present the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just wait for the report to be shared. Oh, do I have to go and put it up? Okay. Great. Am I on? Yeah. Good afternoon, members. So this is agenda item 5, which is land north of West Street. Just a few items to go through first. As the chair has just mentioned, there was a written addendum with some amendments and insertion of section 106 clauses, an amendment to condition 5 and a few other elements. And there's also a brief verbal addendum where a few points to mention. So officers are aware that a briefing note was sent directly to members from the applicant, just to confirm this doesn't form part of the formal submission documents on the application. There's a typo clarification that was pointed out where paragraph 5, 12, 13 of the committee report states that the transport assessment does project a significant increase of traffic to Colchester Road. This is a typo and should read does not, which is in line with the following sentence that concludes there would not be a significant impact on the protected lane. ECC Education have submitted additional comments. They maintain the previous comments, including the financial contributions that are listed in the committee report. There have been 4 additional letters of representation from the public received. No new material planning considerations have been raised, so everything is covered off already by the committee report. And this afternoon we received a letter from a local MP objecting to the scheme. And the letter raised the overdevelopment of Tollesbury, development outside the settlement boundary, raises that the change in the measuring of housing land supply was unfair and the application shouldn't be supported on the tilted balance. Also mentions that the site's not sustainable, insufficient infrastructure mitigation, schools, healthcare, and public transport capacity, and that it does not prioritise sustainable transport modes. So all these points have previously been raised in other representations and don't raise any new planning considerations. Moving on to the application. So as mentioned, item 5. So it's a 10.87 hectare site proposing 159 dwellings. It is an outline application, so means of access is included, which is 2 vehicle accesses, and then appearance, landscaping, layout and scale are reserved matters. So there you'll see the site, so it's existing agricultural use. In flood zone 1, there are no protected trees on site and it's within a sand and gravel mineral safeguarding area. That's the location plan. There's a site showing the relevant nearby roads, so the connection points of West Street and North Street, and then I just highlighted the other streets going into Tollesbury. There are several public rights of way that are near the site, so you'll see public right of way 4 and 17 go through the site. There's also 5 and 3 in fairly near proximity to the site. There's an internal view from the north of the site. You can see there it's largely green open space as it is in agricultural use. This is a view westwards from the southeast, covering the proposed point of access onto West Street and then Garland's farm in the background there. There's a view down North Street towards the proposed access point onto North Street. Here we have a few site constraints. So the site is outside the settlement boundary. You'll see that it does run up to the boundary and slightly into it with the settlement boundary outlined in black. The brown outline is the Tollesbury Conservation Area, and then the green dot just in the left is the Grade 2 listed 76 West Street. In terms of the application, so it's outline, so we don't have detailed plans proposed. This is the land use parameter plan. So on this one, you'll see the orange areas are those proposed for residential use. There's a grey line running through the site, which is the primary access. The green areas will be the various types of open space. Attenuation basins are the blue areas, the lighter areas there. And there's also a dark blue line, which is for drainage infrastructure connections. And then I just popped in 2 black circles just to point out those proposed access points. Green infrastructure parameter plan. So the site is 1.2 kilometres from the Blackwater estuary, protected sites. So they're proposing 3.6 hectares of SANG within the site. That will also be covered off by a RAMS payment through section 106 obligation. You'll see there's a green route running through the site, which has the 2 children's play areas, indicative locations. And the green area, in addition to the suds basins, it will also have the other types of amenity space contained within it. Ooh. There you go, building heights parameter plan. So the darker blue location is up to 2.5 stories, 10.5 meters. And then where it backs onto existing development, it scales down to 2 stories, up to 9.5 meters in height. As I say, we don't have a detailed plan because it is outline, but that's an illustrative master plan, just demonstrating what a potential layout could look like. Some parts of this obviously are locked in from the parameter plans. So you'll see the wooded area across the west and northern boundaries, the green areas down the west and north attenuation basins, and the main spine route running through the site, and then an indicative layout of where the residential buildings could be placed. That's an indicative aerial view from the northwest of the site, looking down with Tollesbury in the background. That's another one taken slightly to the west, where you can see Garland's Farm there on the eastern side above West Street. Obviously, members are aware there are multiple applications live in Tollesbury. So just to provide an update, the light blue site in the southwest is the Obsidian scheme that was approved at committee recently. The yellow site is the site we're reviewing today. There's a smaller red site up in the north, which is still under consideration. And then down in the southeast, you have the Gladman site for up to 149 units, which has lodged an appeal for non-determination. So that one's currently at appeal. So there's a better plan just showing the points of access proposed. I put them in green there. So the one to the south of that green dot is the access onto West Street, which is roughly in that location. Difficult to get an accurate photo there. Here you have plans of what that access point will look like with visibility displays, and there's no highways objections on that. I showed this at the previous committee, but obviously both these sites had previous applications that were both withdrawn. Since then, the southern access point was moved, and highways are happy with the cumulative impact of both of those access points. We have some indicative views from that. So this one is on West Street, slightly to the north, slightly to the west. So you'll see the Obsidian scheme that's been through committee there, just on the right-hand side of that drawing. And then in the distance by that arrow, you have the proposed access for this application. And then it shows the additional highway, that is additional public footpath that is proposed on the northern side of West Street. This is the same sort of angle, but slightly further in, where you can see Tollesbury in the background, those buildings on West Street. And on the left there, you have the proposed access and indicative landscaping. In terms of the North Road access point, that's a view from inside the site, looking outwards onto North Road. Those are the plans for that access that will be coming off there. Again, no highways objections, and they've also confirmed that if that other 24-unit scheme just to the north were to come forward, they don't have any issue in terms of the cumulative impact or safety concerns there. Run through a few view locations. So an LVIA was submitted, that was reviewed independently. I've picked out a few views here. So that's the site in red. I thought this was a helpful one that just has the public footpaths there. So I've got 1, 2, I've numbered them wrong there, but there's 4 points just to pick up on. So the first one is that view from within the site, looking back into the site. And you can see at the top, there's sort of an indicative location of where the development would span, which is obviously across the whole site from this angle. This one is, that should say 2 there. So this is a view from public right-of-way 3, eastwards into the site. So you can see Garland's Farm there. The way these have worked, it's obviously quite difficult to put on the screen. That's the western side, that's the eastern side. So you'll see a red line there and there that connects. But obviously, if I was to put the whole thing, it would be, very, very thin. Wrong mouse. That is Prow 5. So that's taken quite a way off from the site, 900 meters to the northeast, that should say, looking back into site. And then you'll see the approximate location of the site is just indicated there within that bar. And then this is a distance view from public right-of-way 25 down the river about 2 kilometers to the south, looking back. And then you'll see there is some residential properties, and then the approximate extent of the site is just shown there. So it would fall within that area. So it takes us through again to the planning balance. So we've weighed up the harms and the benefits. Just to note, we have support from all key consultees, including Ecology Highways, the lead local flooding authority, heritage officer. That's all subject to the conditions and planning obligations within the committee report, and obviously the written and verbal addendums. Anglian Water do have that holding objection, but they have recommended a condition to resolve that. It essentially relates to a foul drainage strategy. And we did go back out for some additional comments. We haven't heard back from them, but those comments do reflect a time where they were objecting to schemes on that reason. And obviously, you can see the other two sites in Tollesbury, they haven't objected. So if they were to supply us with additional comments, we'd expect that. But as I say, they have recommended a condition, which we've recommended within the committee report to resolve that. And also support from Essex County Council in relation to infrastructure capacity, subject to the Section 106 obligations. So we've obviously given the weights that officers have assigned to the various harms and benefits, which reflect other applications, including the Obsidian scheme to the south and recent appeal decisions. Also, it was raised as well about the Tollesbury neighbourhood plan. We have sought clarification from the planning policy team, and that's at such an early stage, we're not giving any weight to that at this stage. It has been sent to the council, but informally for some views. It's not been submitted under Reg 14 yet. It's not been publicised. So that's why we've not given that any weight in considerations. So as I said previously, as we don't have a 5-year housing land supply under the NPPF, we should grant permission unless the adverse impacts of doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits, which officers don't consider is done, taking into account those benefits, including the key benefit of the provision of housing and affordable housing. So officers recommend that planning permission be granted subject to the conditions and the signing of a Section 106 agreement as detailed in the committee report. And then I just thought it would help to just point out a few of the changes to those heads of terms and the planning conditions, to which were in the written addendum, and I can go through those if needed. Thank you very much, Chair. That's the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Ball. So now we have the public participation. We have 3 people to speak. The first is an objector, Mr. Andrew Gilbert.
I'll need them to...
Make yourself comfortable, please, Mr. Gilbert. And as you know, you have 2 minutes to speak from when you begin.
Chair and members, Tollesbury is a remote rural village surrounded by water on 3 sides, loved by its community for its unique character and heritage, which the government and you seem to be doing their best to ruin. The members' report shows 723 objections from residents, not NIMBYs or blockers, residents that voted for you. In June, you only approved 200 more houses in Tollesbury after being threatened by the prospect of special measures due to the lack of the 5-year land housing supply. Building more and more houses without the required infrastructure, with mitigation that can be negotiated away, does not make our village more sustainable. It makes it less sustainable. I urge one of the members here tonight to ask about NPPF Section 11, the presumption in favour of sustainable development, notably footnote 8, and why does the second part of the footnote seem to be ignored, even when 3.9 years of housing is more than the 75% requirement. The transport assessment by iTransport, measuring the pavements on routes of the Tollesbury School from the site, states that there was no technical justification for ECC Place Services to request a contribution to school transport. Yet their own staff, it seems, can't use a tape measure, as many of the measurements are incorrect. The report shows photos of the wider, more accessible parts of the route and not the narrow pavements and pinch points. I suggest lack of checking on your part. The same consultant's traffic flow show 2% of traffic using the North Road route out of the village, yet the same report shows the table data 23% using one of the district's few protected lanes to Colchester. More errors. The S106 head of terms showed no primary school contribution from the developer. There is not room in Tollesbury School for the predicted 47 children for this development. Where will they go? The letter uploaded today from ECC Education is dated the 23rd of April, before you gave the go-ahead for the 200 homes requiring 60 primary school places. I notice yet again Officer Ball's harms and benefits chart is in red and green.
But I have to stop you there. Next, we have Councillor Caroline Page speaking for Tollesbury Parish Council, if you'd like to come forward. Again, you have 2 minutes to speak from, well, when we get the clock up. Thanks. 2 minutes from when you begin. Thank you.
Tollesbury Parish Council strongly objects to this application for 159 homes because it fails all 3 NPPF objectives and would cause serious social, economic and environmental harm. Socially, This scale of growth is excessive and unjustifiable. Combined with the recently approved 200 homes, it represents a 30% increase, far beyond Tollesbury's established pattern of growth and the housing needs surveys, which identified a need for around 50 homes, not 359. The developer claims there to be safe walking routes to the school. However, the direct route relies on using the pavement outside the old bakery at 67 centimetres wide, narrowing to 65. The primary school pedestrian audit shows this is below wheelchair standards, too narrow for a parent and child, and wholly unsuitable for a pushchair. This claim directly conflicts with NPPF requirements for safe, well-designed places. Economically, the development adds major pressure to an already strained infrastructure with the sewage system already under stress. Growth without infrastructure is not sustainable development. Environmentally, the proposal would permanently remove farmland at the village entrance, add traffic to the peninsula's limited road network, and harm our landscape, historic environment, and archaeological heritage, all protected under the NPPF. Crucially, key consultee responses, including up-to-date school place numbers, are still outstanding. Until the impact of 359 additional homes is properly assessed, this proposal cannot be claimed sustainable. Determining it now would mean a decision based on assumptions, not evidence. Tollesbury is not opposed to development. We are opposed to development that is excessive, unsafe, and unsustainable.
Thank you. And finally, we have the agent, Mr. Rhys Bradshaw. Same again, you get 2 minutes from when you begin.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, councillors. This is an outline application for up to 159 homes in a highly sustainable location. The site was a preferred location for growth by the Parish Council, although the number of dwellings was not agreed. The proposed maximum number of homes is justified when taking into account the standard method and the anticipated quantum of development envisaged for Tollesbury in the emerging local plan. We've worked closely with officers to deliver the following benefits: low density development taking into account the prevailing built form, public open space covering 40% of the site area, including green corridors, a large area of on-site suitable alternative natural green space specifically proposed to help safeguard the Blackwater estuary and other sites nearby, improved connectivity via a road link between West Street and North Road, a footway and cycle link into the village centre and existing footpath networks, on-site B&G of 20.9% habitat units and 47% hedgerow units in excess of statutory requirements, a full suite of agreed Section 106 contributions totalling approximately £2 million, including policy-compliant affordable housing, bus service improvements, school transport contributions, and education, healthcare and RAMS contributions, all as requested in full by the statutory consultees. The proposals have been carefully designed to respect building heights and to screen the site successfully with sensitive landscaping. The proposed land use plan will inform future reserve matters applications. As with landscape impacts, highways impacts have also been carefully considered in conjunction with recently approved and submitted schemes and agreed with the Highway Authority. The application makes a meaningful contribution to the Council's 5-year housing land supply. New affordable homes are needed by local people, where there are 730 active applicants on the waiting list and over 55 children and their families in temporary accommodation. I respectfully ask the committee to grant planning permission. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Members? Okay, Councillor Morgan, followed by Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So here we are again. A large speculative development approved, or the officer's recommendation for approval. Residents absolutely outraged at the possible damage to be done to their community. And ward members obviously conflicted as to their ability to help and support their residents, but obviously mindful of the responsibilities that comes with the objection against when we're in a tilted balance. how did we get to this stage? Who is to blame for this? Well, apparently, by certain documents being put out by our colleagues on the far side of the chamber, I am, or rather the Conservative group is, for failing to have got the 5-year housing land supply and local development plan in place. This ludicrous allegation is all the more daft because they, 3 years ago, helped vote in the previous administration, which did diddly squat over the last 3 years to actually get the local development plan and the 5-year housing land supply sorted. But it also refuses or doesn't sort of pick up the real person or where the real fault for this lies, which is not in Maldon, but is in Westminster, or more now Manchester, where the government imposed through the flame-haired virago from Stockport the NPPF last December, which imposed the tyranny of Section 11D and it put us in the tilted balance. There is literally nothing that we are therefore in that situation. We are up against a situation where if we oppose this and it is appealed, we're up against 9% on our appeal percentage at the moment, which we therefore run the risk of having those planning powers taken from us. That is where the real fault for this particular situation lies. And that is where, if you want to find out who to protest to, that is where to lay the door. It is clear that Angela Rayner wants to kill Shire England by building over it. She probably obviously has an sort of peculiar sort of view of the affordability of houses, and she's obviously never heard of statutory land tax. But the point is that this is where the problem lies and where we need to place any sort of complaint and our objection. So I'm afraid that I can't see at this stage the task that is required to show that the objections or the lack of gain is against the gain that is going to be produced. I think that is a very difficult point to actually prove, and I can't see at this stage that has been that argument has been made. But I wait to hear that argument and will leave an open mind until that time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, having lived in the Tollesbury area for the last 66 years, I can probably remember the last 60 years, to be fair. The high street hasn't changed literally in that time. That is perfectly good farmland. I know that land well. That used to grow really good grass seed and things. So the land is perfect for farming. And I'm not convinced about the sewage system. I was at a meeting once with the oystermen of Tollesbury and various other fisheries with sewage that cannot be coped. So I haven't seen anything here where that can be coped. And also another 200 plus cars without any infrastructure. So it's the drainage. I mean, it is literally disgusting, some of it coming out into the sea. I do sail there as well, so I know. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Paula Spenceley.
I have to say that I am getting a little tired of political attacks which do nothing to help the residents in this meeting. There's a total misreading of the document you're referring to say that it blames the leader directly in any way, and actually refers to a time when this council failed to protect its existing plan. And actually, I don't want to discuss this now because it doesn't help the residents. But I remember sitting in meetings as a brand new councillor, incredulous that members were believing that the North Heybridge Garden suburb would be built out of 50 houses a year. I managed to correct that perception by walking on the site and checking. I'm not going to go further than that at this time, but I do not believe that a political argument in this meeting helps these residents. These residents are here because they're concerned about this development, and I think we should sit it there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Stamp. Yep.
Do you mind if I stay seated?
Of course
I've got some
not, no.
papers. If you just bear with me, I want to go through our LDP, page 46, just to remind members what it actually says about larger villages. It says define settlements within a limited range of services and opportunities for employment, retail and education. They serve a limited local catchment and contain a lower level of access to public transport. I know that's been covered in the officer's report, but I want to just paint a little picture. I'm glad the representative, the councillor from Tollesbury, said what the increase in numbers would be, because I did what I normally do. I googled the population of Tollesbury. The census in 21 was 2,621, so I put it through AI, and they reckon approximately 2,810. If we increase it, as it stands at the moment, with the 200 and then this 159, it will go up to 30%. But if we include it to what the presentation, the officer said about the rest of the applications that could come forward, I'm glad I'm sitting down, because that will increase the population of this lovely village by 47%. Now that is absolutely disgraceful. And I could have got my maths wrong. I was waiting for somebody to come and check it, but I think I've actually done it right. So if anyone wants to correct me, then I'm absolutely okay about it. But I also have got problems, and I noticed the officer did raise about the water company, yeah, and we know we can't stop them. But look at what we're going through now. We've all got hose pipe bans. We're all struggling. We're all, you know, Councillor. I always forget your surname. Miss Skipman. He's Clive, Mr. Councillor Morley, has raised a valid point, yeah, but this has got to be taken seriously in context with everything. To me, I actually don't agree with the officer's recommendation. I think it is ruining the countryside. My concern is because the other one has been approved, what grounds, how can we stand up against this one on the other side of the road? Because to me, the damage has been done from the previous application that was approved. So I'm still a little bit on the fence here, but I actually think the benefit isn't and doesn't, in my opinion, outweigh the harm. And when you consider that little Johnny and Jenny has got to walk along the pavement that I think the kind resident councillor said 64 centimetres or 67, forgive me. You know, that is dangerous. We've got small ones in Burnham, and I get so many complaints, especially if there's a hedge or something overgrown. You cannot get a buggy. Say if you've got a double buggy, say if you have twins and you have another one here, you cannot walk to school, and we're supposed to be building in sustainable areas. I don't think this is sustainable, and I as much as I don't want all the development out on our areas, I don't think this is in the right location. So I'm going to wait to see, Madam Chair, what other evidence has come through. And if I can have another chat maybe later, because I've got some other points. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Durham.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I mean, Tollesbury is a village I know very well. I used to represent it until May. Can we just have the picture of the with showing the other application sites back up, please? Yeah, that one. I mean, that gives an idea of the scale in terms of area. Never mind the number of individual units. You know, if all of those get permission, it's massive in comparison to the existing settlement. Certainly, the point about access along that pavement is highly relevant, and as we've been pointed out by the bakery, it's just about passable with a single buggy, and actually because of the width of the road there, the curbstones are often getting damaged, and that makes it even more dangerous, and there have been people fall over on that. So there is no pedestrian access along that side of the road, and anybody trying to get in and out of Tollesbury, it's effectively well, log jammed. I sat waiting for many minutes for a gap in the traffic. But Councillor Morley's raised a very good point. The sewage system is insufficient, and he referenced the oyster beds, and I was at a meeting only earlier this year, and this is still going on. The pollution on the oyster beds, they still don't fully acknowledge the fact that it comes from the sewage works. There is definitely a discharge of raw sewage into there because there are people in the village who have been monitoring it and taking water quality water samples for the quality. So the existing sewage work cannot cope with the existing settlement, never mind the number of new properties that have an extant permission and are proposed. I totally understand and accept that what Councillor Morgan has said. This is not our issue. This is being forced on us. We do have the permission the other side of the road that is going to cause us a very serious precedent, and will be very difficult for us to ignore that, whether we like it or not. I certainly don't like this application. I don't like any of them there because, you know, Tollesbury is out on a limb. One road in and one road out. You can't really count North Road. And when there is any roadworks or if there's an accident on one of the roads, it brings the whole village, it shuts the whole village down. And that has happened. So acknowledging the fact that this is going to be a very difficult policy decision based on the permissions that we have been forced to make previously, I think we're going to have to wait and see what the officers guide us on that. But to sum my views up, I don't like it, it's too much, and Tollesbury shouldn't have to be taking the brunt of the district shortfall.
Councillor Cyril Norman.
Thank you. Well, everybody knows exactly how I feel about this planning. It's exactly the same as the last one. And I'm very angry that politics is being brought into this. In fact, I could actually, if I had long enough, I could spend quite a long time telling you exactly why we're in the situation. The people were saying that the last people were wrong in giving in the situations that we've put us in now, and that wasn't. That was it was a conservative situation at that time. Now, however, in this situation, we know, all of us councillors know, that we're on a hiding to nothing, like I said in the last situation. But however, we have to accept that now the reason that the government has said that people have got to build houses is because the last one didn't. And they said that they want to make sure that, in fact, that people do start to realise that it's not very nice not having a home. Now, from my point of view, I know that I'm in the very same situation as I was last time, and as you know, what situation we became in that. And I'm quite happy, but then I'm only one councillor. I was quite happy to go and tell the government or the situation what the real situation is. And I don't think they know. I really don't think that all over the country that not enough people now are saying what is the truth. And from my point of view, what Councillor Stamp has said makes so much sense that I really don't know that I can add any more to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Nick Spenceley.
Thank you, Chair. I'd be interested in a minute to hear officers' responses to objectors' comments on inaccuracies or alleged inaccuracies, because those points need looking at, and if there are issues with this report, that needs to be considered. I've been reminded, I can't really talk about Haybridge, which has had a similar percentage increase. I have just talked about Haybridge, haven't I? But anyway, but it's had a similar percentage increase, and we mentioned that as an appeal, which was unsuccessful. And here we are, as several people have commented, looking at a balance of a tilted balance as a result of the 5-year housing land supply situation. In its own right, this actually doesn't make vast inroads into the housing land supply, but as several people have pointed out, the cumulative impact on the village is enormous. And I don't know, in terms of sustainable objections that will survive an appeal, whether we can refer to the cumulative impact, or do we just have to look at this in its own right? I don't like that, and I don't think other people do. But certainly I'd like if officers can recall the issues that objectors raised, I'd be interested to hear their response.
Okay.
Do you want me to?
Oh, yes, please.
Shall I go? Shall I go? I'll go through in order, if that's all right.
Yes, please.
Or just at the start, I mean, I think a few people sort of said interested to hear officers' views. Essentially, the committee report is the planning department's view. I think a few people said we are where we are with the 5-year housing land supply. It was raised regarding the 75% housing delivery test, but in the NPPF, it's kind of either or. So it's the 75 HDT, or it's the 5-year housing land supply. And from very recent appeal decisions, I don't think we can debate that. I think it's a fact that we are under 5 years, so the presumption is in favour of sustainable development we're saying has to apply. So I mean, it's not a subjective view. We're hired to go through national and local policy, review it all, on the merits of the application on the day it's determined, taking into account all material considerations, and then advise you of what we think policy dictates to be the correct decision, which is the committee report that has been published. If I go around ever so slightly on cumulative impact, so there is obviously a sort of moving elements of how much weight you can give to it, because obviously you don't know whether anything is going to be approved. With the site in the southeast, that's currently at appeal. They chose to take that to appeal. We don't know where that appeal is going to go. Obviously, officers are going to bring a report to members with a recommendation for members to essentially resolve their minded to recommendation, should they have had the opportunity to determine that within time. So that will obviously advise us on the appeal on that. Again, you don't know if these are actually going to be built out. That's why we don't give full weight to all these things. And obviously then it can be quite unreasonable to applicants who have maybe made a submission later when a scheme has been submitted earlier, but may not even be built out. So that's the way we do it. So at the moment, what we're advising, you'll see in the committee report, is the Obsidian site in the south of this one obviously has the recommendation to grant. The 106 is ongoing, so we're advising to give moderate weight to that. So it's kind of a mid-level of assumption that it may come forward. We don't know if it will be built out. We don't know in terms of viability and everything like that. There's a lot of stuff to go on outside of planning. On the appeal scheme, we're giving very limited weight to that at present, because obviously this decision is preceding that one. So that's how we take it into account. And then obviously the cumulative impact, you'll have to look at the specific elements where there may be a cumulative impact, which is what we've done in the committee report for this item. Then going around the other items mentioned, so agricultural land, that's in the planning balance. We don't deny that it's not grade 3 agricultural land, but we've given it limited weight, so it's a very low level of weight given as a harm, and that reflects recent appeal decisions on sites that have had double this amount of grade 3 land and a lot of 3A land that was identified in that, which is best and most versatile, and all the inspectors have given limited weight to that. So it is in the balance, but inspectors have seen the huge amount of agricultural land throughout the district and beyond, and essentially have said it may look like a lot of land when you're looking at this site and when you look at it on this map, but in the grand scheme of things, it's a very small amount. That's why they give it only limited weight. But no, we have taken that into account. It's just that in terms of the determination, it's a small level within the balance. On drainage, I know this was coming up a lot. It's unfortunate Anglian Water couldn't come back with comments, but essentially they've recommended a condition for a strategic foul water drainage assessment. And obviously there is elements that go on outside of planning where the applicant would have to engage with them to find a sustainable point of connection. They have a statutory duty as a water provider to provide water for these developments. So it's, I think, you know, the line that we were taking when they were routinely objecting was it's not a great reason for refusal in terms of planning. And then a lot of the appeals found that as well. So we've come with a condition, which would be pre-commencement. So that would all have to be fleshed out prior to the spade going into the dirt. And like I say, they have a statutory duty as a water provider to deal with all these methods. So it's somewhat on them. Vehicles, so that's something where the cumulative impact does come into account, because obviously we're giving moderate weight to obsidian. There is something you often do where you look at a sort of a sensitivity test of what could be a worst case scenario. So the applicant has submitted a technical note to the transport assessment, which has looked at the cumulative impact of the 3 large schemes. County highways basically don't look at highway capacity for schemes under 50 units because they essentially say the trip numbers are so low it wouldn't impact. Even if you were to, it would probably be, it would be a minor impact. But essentially, where are we now? I've got somewhere. Yeah, so I won't go through it in too much detail, but essentially they've looked at key junctions. So this junction down here, Elysian Gardens, High Street, North Street, West Street, and then this junction up here in Tollesbury Darcy, where Tollesbury Road and Church Street connect, and obviously South Street has the through road. And essentially the worst case scenario for this one, we don't deny there's an impact, but the worst case scenario is on Tollesbury Road going outwards during AM peak. Essentially you have the RFC is a national measurement of essentially the capacity of flow through a junction, and kind of best practice or a junction operating well is 0.85. So cumulative impact of all 3 schemes is 0.84. And it's basically a percentage where 100% is junction at capacity. So this has been through highways and they agree. And essentially, the evidence we have before us is that junction is still within good flow rates. And if you look, there is an impact. So obviously they're looking at potential build out, potentially 2028. So you'll see there's a maximum delay of 13.4 seconds projected, which would change to 40 seconds is the worst case scenario. So there's basically a 27-second additional delay if all 3 schemes were built out to the maximum in a worst case scenario, which isn't adverse in highways terms and is a lot less than some the land west of the cemetery scheme. I think the worst scenarios on that were about 4 to 5 times this level, and the inspector didn't consider that a reason for refusal. So they have looked at the worst case scenario, and what we're essentially saying is it's still within best practice for the vehicles.
Chairman, point of clarity. A point of clarity.
Councillor Fluker, yes.
Can you confirm whether or not those figures have been? I mean, your base figures presumably have been supplied by the applicant. Are they more than District Council's figures? Have they been checked? Have we done anything independent? I mean, I'm only asking this because, it seems from having looked at the objections to this scheme, there seems to be a huge amount of concern about traffic. Now, we all see these figures and we've seen what applicants have provided in the past, but they'd never get challenged until we get to another place, and then it's often too late. I mean, I'm sure that the good folk at Tollesbury that sit behind me to my left, I mean, they know what the roads are like there, and this is where we are flawed. I mean, if we get to we had this with an appeal 2 weeks ago at Spratt's Farm, where the inspector had to agree with me under not interrogation, but under cross-examination, that 2 vehicles could not pass in the road that served the application site. Yet Essex Highways said it was fine. And this is where I think we miss something. We are relying too much on the technical evidence provided by applicants, which I'm sure is provided in good faith. And we hang ourselves on this. And it's not right. While the housing minister sits in her flat outside of her constituency in Brighton, telling us to build, 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 this is wrong. But thank you, Chairman. I'll come back later.
Yeah. On that, yeah. So essentially, what it's based on are traffic counts. So they undertake a week traffic count of the vehicles, and then they apply a kind of general growth.
With respect, Chairman, I know how it works. What I'm talking about is the supply of the base data. The base data is provided for the applicant, and it's never checked by us. You can take that data and you can apply the Essex County Council algorithms, which will give you the numbers. But if the base data is anyway flawed, then the numbers that you're presenting this committee and asking them to base a decision on is flawed.
Thank you.
I mean, I know on the land west of the cemetery, we did provide our own assessment, and then the inspector went with the appellant's assessment in that case because he said it was more accurate and more robustly done. So it's not necessarily as simple as providing a response, but I mean, that's how it's done. Is they undertake an assessment. Census data is used, or the local area for where trips are likely to go. Essex County Council Highways have reviewed it, and
okay, thank you, Councillor.
no, of course, but I mean,
I think I've made my point, and the officer's made it, and I'll happily make my point in another place.
I think even if you put that aside, the main impacts, the vast majority of this traffic is flowing down Tollesbury Road, which has capacity. I know some of the areas that are worse are those. Obviously, when you get into Tollesbury, I appreciate there's a lot of cars parked on roads. We've spoken to highways about that. They've said, that's not a severe impact on the highway. There are very few reasons for trips eastwards on this site. During AM and PM peak, when it's largely commuting runs, they're going west. And yeah, so where it's at its worst, there's going to be very few trips in those peak hours where it is the worst impact that are going through those areas. And yeah, I mean, it's on a separate note. I mean, you could say that about everything where we undertake our own assessment in every regard. But when an assessment comes in, it's reviewed by statutory consultee. They agree with it. They obviously have great knowledge of the local roads. It's not for us to pay to question. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Fluker. Thank you. I will get back to you, Councillor Morley,
Sorry,
but there
Chair,
are others who
it's
haven't
all right if
spoken.
I mean, there was a lot more there.
Yes, please carry
on. So larger villages was raised, again, appeal decisions and the previous decision just to the south of this, we've accepted it's a sustainable location. It's not the most sustainable location, but in terms of where we look in the NPPF, we've agreed it's a sustainable location. There are multiple local amenities for people moving into the area. So that's, I mean, a lot of this we've seen, in recent appeals, sites that are certainly less sustainable, we found to be sustainable. So that's where we are with this, and that's what we're advising. There was, where were we? In terms of, Anglian Water, I guess we've dealt with that. In terms of the school walk, so the applicant did submit an additional note, which has been through all the statutory consultees, which essentially was the reason why the requirement for a primary school transport contribution was removed. So they've done a primary school pedestrian audit, which looks at multiple routes that go from the site to the school. It does acknowledge, obviously, there are some pinch points. We're not denying that, and it's been pointed out to me. For example, the King's Head pub has the bay window, but there are points to cross the road, and there is a safe route, and that was basically the basis for the removal of that contribution. Again, while there are pinch points, you can get through them, and it's not something that's at a level of harm where we'd be recommending objection on that. Where are we? And then there was inaccuracies mentioned, but I wasn't sure what that was in relation to. So I don't know if that wants to be clarified. But otherwise, that's all the points that I had down.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Fitton next.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, again, we're in an unfortunate position, as Councillor Maldon pointed out. I think it is worth repeating where we are and why we are where we are. I mean, basically, if we were in a situation where the government's, the Conservative, and I'm independent by the way, it's not political, MPPF for 2023 was put forward, we now have a land supply position of 9.27 years with a housing target of 268. If we were to continue to use our plan target, i.e. it was presumed to be up to date, of 310 houses per year, we'd have a housing land supply of 8.42 years.
Excuse me, Councillor, could you move your microphone so that we can hear you a bit better?
Okay. If we were to...
Thank you.
Can I start again on that bit? Okay, yeah.
No, you're all right.
If we were to look at where we are now, on 12th December 2024, the government decided that housing growth, to create economic growth, was their primary agenda. And they changed our housing target from 268, which it would have been, to now 586. So that being the case, we can now demonstrate a five-year housing land supply, in our opinion, of 4.04 years. Okay. Now, where does that leave us? That basically means that overnight the government wiped out our local development plan, and now we're at the mercy of speculative development. Developers are very good at saying, you need all this housing in your district because of the standard method. But we do have to understand the standard method is really just a number that equals a number the government wants to build, which is £370,000. Even our local housing need assessment comes up with the view that the numbers proposed are probably not going to be achievable for this part of the district. So where does that leave us? That leaves in a situation where we have a plan that's out of date, which then reflects upon the planning balance. And when I look at the planning balance put forward by the officers, it basically says because it's out, the development's outside the settlement boundary, there's only limited harms created. Well, yes, that is true, because basically what's happened is the government have destroyed our plan, meant that we have got no plan, so now we're relying upon the MPPF, which doesn't designate where housing should be, which is why we've got this donut of development around Tollesbury. We've got a donut of development coming up around Latchington, Southminster, Burnham. Every single place in the district is surrounded by these huge amounts of speculative growth. We might well take the view we don't need it, but the problem is the government says we do. So when we go through the planning balances, and I did it quickly because I've attended quite a large number of appeals now, and I compared it to the last one that we attended, Maldon Woods. I wouldn't disagree with what the officer concluded. Identified harms outside of settlement boundary limited. Built form on Greenfield site, major moderate impact. So the overall impact is significant. And then we've got loss of agriculture, and that is limited, I would agree. Low level, less to the heritage buildings, limited. Unfortunately, because of the government policy, delivery of housing is going to be regarded as a significant benefit. Some inspectors might actually regard it as substantial benefit, but because we have been able to defend our land supply position around about 4 years, they are at the moment viewing it as significant benefit. I would perhaps look at the communal open space, job creation, local facilities and so forth as limited benefit. So then we still end up in a situation where we've got significant harm because of departure from the plan, shall we say, and we've got significant benefit from the development because of the housing land supply position. Then we're left with making a decision, and here's where the problem arises. The MPPF directs us to grant position unless any adverse impact of doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. Now, I might take the view that it's 50-50. The harms equal the benefits, but that's not good enough. And that's exactly how an inspector is going to view these things. And quite often in most of these appeals, it might be a very narrow margin. Certainly, if we had a local development plan, there will be substantial harm because of departure from the local development plan. And this development wouldn't even be coming forward as an application if we could demonstrate a land supply position of 9 years. So unfortunately, and many of the residents, and I would have to sort of remember this, is that whilst we have a very good plan that was working absolutely perfectly, the government destroyed it. And now we're in a situation where we have to argue why our, if you like, a development strategy that's out of date based upon a government saying you've got to build more houses. So I'll be honest, I've heard lots of things said about the harms that have been caused. At the end of the day, we've sat in appeals. Whatever we come forward with, we've got to evidence. So if we say there's harms because of traffic impacts, we've got to evidence it. We tried that at Southminster and we couldn't get anyone to come forward. We put up a really hard fight for 6 days at Maldon Woods, looking at the RFC impacts, and it was over 1 according to our consultant. You know, at the end of the day, we can come up with loads of reasons for refusal, and I follow up what other councils are doing. Similar things happened recently at Rochford. The members came up with lots of reasons for refusal, problems with the drainage and impact on the character of nature, about 4 weeks ago. I looked there yesterday. Today they've actually written to the planning inspector and said, I'm sorry, we've got to withdraw our reasons for refusal because we can't evidence them. I mean, so all I'd say to members is it's all very well us coming up with these with reasons for refusal if we're minded to do so. But you also need to understand you're going to have to evidence it and present evidence to support those reasons for argument. Otherwise, all we've done is kick the can down the road. Unfortunately, the only way we're going to find a way out of the situation is to grant enough consents so that we can demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, so that our local plan is up to date, and developments such as this that come forward that are speculative, we've got good reason to refuse them based upon our policies because they carry full weight. But until that point in time, unfortunately, we are in an impossible situation, and we can either accept the situation and do something to try to address it, or we can bury our heads in the sand and if you like, do what we want to do, which is to refuse these applications, because that's what residents expect us to do, because you're elected to do it. Well, yes, we are, but we also got to act responsibly and do what's best, not just for individual villages, because Latchington will suffer the same fate, but for the district as a whole. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Chair. I want to start actually saying if this were to be approved, I've got 2 conditions that I would like to have added, please. And apologies if these have been added in the last day. I've been trying to keep up with it all. I would like to see a condition that says no construction vehicles to go to or from the site along the Colchester Road, Back Road, Chapel Road and North Road, because they're all 7.5 tonne limits. And it's a bit of a small thing, but I'd like the location and visibility of the freestanding real-time passenger information sign at the Square bus stop to recognise that that is a very sensitive location. It would be great to have passenger information there, but it is in a conservation area. It's directly outside medieval cottages. I think we added that condition to the Obsidian one as well. So I'd like to have those 2 conditions in there, please. Okay, I've got a few questions, so it's probably easier for me if I ask a question and then move on to the next one once we've had the answer, if that's okay. So looking at this threat of special measures, in June we considered the other major Tollesbury development, and on that night some members possibly believed that because we had 9.5% of our refusals overturned at appeal, a refusal could tip us over the 10% threshold, leading us into special measures. Now, all members have since received an explanatory note, and I want to make sure I've understood the explanation. I believe that that 9.5% that was referred to in that meeting actually relates to a completed period that ended a year ago. And I believe that we're all required to make our minds up based on weighing up the harms and benefits of this application tonight and not on government metrics. Could somebody comment on that, please? Thank you.
Mr. Jaggard.
The government sets a number of performance measures for local authorities relating to planning. Okay. The government sets a number of performance measures for planning. and one of those is performance at appeals, a number of planning applications which are granted at appeal compared with a number of major applications altogether. And you're correct that the latest published data was to the period to March 2025, which was published later after a 9-month lag, but that is a rolling process. We are constantly being measured against that, and as time goes on, they will publish updates. So it is a rolling period. It isn't a moment in time and then we can ignore it. So we are still being judged against that, and it's a rolling 2-year period with a lag before the government publishes the data.
Oh, Chair, I think yours is...
No, mine stays on. It's a special one.
It's all right.
Mine's on.
God smiles on those that serve him best.
This one's on. This will be interesting. Thank you. And so could you advise, are we meant to make up our decisions tonight based on weighing up the harms and benefits of this application as opposed to special measure threats, as it were, please? Thank you.
Mr. Jaggard.
Without trying to go back to all the conversations last time, but the question for the planning committee tonight is around making the appropriate decision on the planning application in front of you. In doing so, the expectation would be on the council and therefore the planning committee to make robust decisions based on the evidence, the planning case and the planning law, which informs that, not on, so that is the fact, and therefore considering whether those reasons for refusal, if there were reasons for refusal, would stand up at appeal, is part of making the correct and robust planning decisions. The implications of those decisions are would flow from that, but you are almost irrespective of the fact that the committee should be making the decisions based on planning law, planning policies, planning judgments, government ministerial statements and those such factors, and within that you're considering the likelihood of being able to defend those reasons at an appeal, and as a responsible council, if those don't have reasonable chance of success at appeal, you're taking that into account and all the implications of doing so. But fundamentally you're correct, the decision you're making today should be the correct planning decision.
Thank you.
Thank you. And sticking with percentages, somebody's already mentioned tonight that in the NPPF it talks about if you don't have a 5-year housing land supply, how the tilted balance swings into place. But it does have this footnote, which is dense reading. I've read it several times and I'm still not convinced. But I think it says that if you've achieved 75% of your 5 years over the last 3 years, then you don't have the tilted balance. But maybe I've misunderstood that because it is quite dense reading. Could somebody explain that, please? And can we know what, if we're close to that 75%, where exactly are we, please? Thank you.
Mr. Jaggard.
I will try answering this one in a slightly different way because Mr. Ball answered it earlier. There are two elements of the footnote in the NPPF. One is relating to the 5-year land supply, which is a literal pass or fail. You either have 5-year land supply or you don't. The second is a housing delivery test, which looks at whether or not you have delivered over the last 3 years 75% or more, or conversely or less, of the right numbers of homes you were supposed to deliver in that period. So they're two separate tests, both of which can push you into what's known as a tilted balance.
Okay, so what is our percentage then? Are we 75%, 95%, 25%? Thank you.
We are waiting for the government to republish the figures. We were over 100%, picking up the points that Councillor Fittock raised before. We used to have over a 5-year land supply. There is some question about how the government will choose to apply the changes since which were introduced in December 2024. And while there has been quite a lot of speculation, we haven't had that confirmed from the government, which is why I'm not giving you a precise figure. But it is like, I'm hoping we would be above the 75%. Someone may have already done the calculation. But irrespective of whether we're above the 75% or not, it isn't, have you passed one, therefore you've passed both. If you fail one, you fail the test, and therefore you're in tilted balance. So we could be way over 100% for the housing delivery test, but we fail the 5-year land supply, therefore we're still in tilted balance.
Thank you. I don't like standing in front of people. It feels horribly rude. Okay. Looking at highways, Councillor Fluke is absolutely right that we're looking at flawed data, and I'll just give you one example here. Somewhere in all of the reports it says that 23% of all Tollesbury traffic goes to Colchester. There's a map in the reports from the applicant's consultant, from their highways consultant, that says no traffic at all will turn out of this development on towards Colchester. I mean, that just doesn't seem very likely. But then you realise why. That's because Colchester Road is missing from their map, so there would be no traffic. And we're using this sort of evidence to reach our decisions. That really doesn't sit well with me. Okay, I'll move on from highways to education. So this development, it's nearly 50 primary children, and the one we agreed in June, it's, I've lost my number, 60, so 110 altogether. But the school is almost full. There'll be pockets of places, but the school is almost full. So these children are going to need to go to school elsewhere. Now, the next nearest primary is Darcy. I just want to point out that that school prioritises children from other villages above those from Tollesbury. It's in their admissions policy. Tollesbury's not mentioned in their admissions policy. And also it's a Church of England school. Their website talks about their Christian ethos, and their admissions policy prioritises regular churchgoers who have to be signed off by the vicar. And this isn't what all families want. So I think most of the 50 primary age children on this development will need to go to Tiptree, Heybridge, Totham. They're all at least 6 miles away. We're going to be turning our 4-year-olds into commuters. They certainly won't be walking there. What parent would put their 4-year-old on a bus? Those families are going to go by car. You need to do a direct body-to-body transfer of a small child, of a 4-year-old. You need to say to the teacher, they woke up this morning and they were crying because they couldn't find their something. You have those conversations. You do not stick a small child on a bus and just sort of say, ta-ra. So those parents are going to take their children to school in the car, which is not sustainable. It's a contrary to our LDP, what's it, T1, sustainable transport. Now, some children will get into Tollesbury School, I expect, and then now we're looking at walking to school. And I come back to the evidence in the report. Originally, Essex Education said there was no safe walking route to the school. And then there seems to have been some sort of argument, really. The developers said, yes, there is. And then Essex have said, oh, yeah, you're right. How did that happen? So this morning I walked it just to make sure that I wasn't missing something. And I have followed the instructions in the developers, well, yeah, their instructions, which say you walk along this side and then you cross over. So I crossed over at the designated point. So by that point, I'd already gone past the bit we've heard about outside the bakery with the 67 centimetre wide pavement. The wheelchair distant gap is supposed to be 90 centimetres. I have the name of the policy somewhere, I won't find that now. So 67 centimetre wide. I've got through that, nobody ran me over. I should note that that narrow bit of pavement is next to a very narrow bit of road as well, which is why the curbstones keep going missing, because cars going two ways keep clipping the curbstones off. But I got through that bit okay. I got to the point where the developer believes that these children will cross. Now, you would never advise somebody cross right in the mouth of a crossroads. You'd advise a child to stop 30 metres away from the crossroads, but this crossing point is right in the mouth of the crossroads. So I looked both ways, as you do. I crossed over the road and somebody came out of the crossroads. He wanted to turn left. He only looked to his right. He didn't look in where he's actually driving at all, and he nearly ran me over. And I think I'm only doing this test for 2 minutes. This happens to me. He came to a halt. He didn't run me over. Sorry about that. And another car nearly went into him because he was expecting him to keep a move on. He hadn't noticed me there either. Now, I'm 5'6" tall. This child is going to be 4 foot tall, and they didn't notice me. And when I got to the other side of the road, I actually could not get onto the pavement because that bit's very small, and there was somebody standing there waiting to cross towards me, and they just didn't move out the way. So I had to stand in the road for a moment. There's no way I would send a primary school child along that route. But if they go another way, then pavement's missing. There are hatched white lines on the road instead of a pavement. So there's no raised bit with a curb. And the developer's report said somewhere that the painted white lines are to prevent vehicles parking there. Well, paint doesn't stop people parking. In fact, cars are constantly parking there because it's by the corner shop. So pedestrians have to walk round them. You have to walk onto the B1023. Now, the B1023 is a priority route. It leads to Tollesbury's industrial estate. You've got HGVs going down there. There's a car transporter goes down there, I think, every day. It just is not a road you want your child walking in. So whatever all these reports say, I wouldn't put my child in that, and I wouldn't expect other people to put their child in that. So that's children going to school. As far as general pedestrians are concerned, I've said about this bit of the pavement that's not the 90 centimetres wide, and we've got hundreds of objectors who've written to point this out, and they've just been completely ignored. I don't think we should be doing that to residents. As far as buses are concerned, this is an interesting one. In the report, it says that bus services generally run every 30 minutes. Now, unlike in the Obsidian one, this report does clarify what that means, and there's a bit of an extra explanation, but I want to make this really clear to people. There is no single service to or from Tollesbury that runs every 30 minutes for any destination, and there's nothing in the report that suggests the Section 106 money will make that happen. There might be an improvement, but we're not going to get a bus service going anywhere for every 30 minutes. That 30-minute figure's been calculated by considering all of the buses to all three destinations in both directions as one service. Well, yeah, that way you can bring the average wait time down to half an hour. In reality, the shortest gap's an hour, the longest is 3. The average wait's an hour and 50 minutes for any given bus. The report also says there's a dependable bus service, but that statement isn't evidenced by any metrics from bus companies or passengers. It's simply wrong. This is the sort of statement, I think, that makes residents feel that officers are not listening and that officers aren't researching things properly. It makes residents unnecessarily angry when the report could just acknowledge there's a patchy and limited bus service. The report does acknowledge that there would be an element of reliance on private motor vehicle trips. People just don't own a car and then go by bus. If you need a car for quite a lot of your journeys, you'll buy a car and then you'll use it. Almost every household on this development will own at least one car, and that isn't ecologically sustainable. It's contrary to NPPF paragraph 110 that says significant development, which this is, should limit the need to travel and offer a genuine choice of transport modes. Well, a 3-hour wait for a bus isn't a genuine choice. Anglian Water. By the way, I have torn out half the pages of this because I thought you'd send me home. Anglian Water, I can guarantee you that if you go and stand outside the Tollesbury sewage plant right now, there is E. coli infected water coming out of the pipe into the Blackwater, into the triple SI, I should add. Sure. It's 24/7.
Sorry, Mr. Jabbard.
I'm just worried that we don't go into anything which could be classed as slanderous. If we don't have medical facts, that E. coli is coming out, that has been scientifically tested, we can't accuse any of the water companies in doing that, and I think we've got to ask that to be withdrawn to save any slanderous comments.
Can I continue with that then, please? I totally understand why you're saying that, Mr. Jaggard, through you, Chair. I do completely, you're right to warn people, but we do have the evidence. There's a citizen science project ongoing with Essex University. We do have the data, we do have the evidence. We're having a series of meetings about it right now. I've been in communications with Anglian Water. I want them to come back to our overview and scrutiny meeting here. I wouldn't sit here and just, you know, wave malicious rumours around if I hadn't seen the data. I think this is a significant overdevelopment of Tollesbury. We don't have a 5-year housing land supply because of the shift in government targets, but Tollesbury should not be taking the hit for this district. If we could rewrite our LDP as fast as the government can change targets, we'd never allocate this much housing to Tollesbury. It's not a sustainable location. People talk about Tollesbury being sustainable. It is true that you could sever all contact with the outside world and stay in Tollesbury and never go anywhere else, provided you don't have a child that needs to go to school. Yeah, I could live in the 2 little village shops. I could never go to the cinema, the theatre, all that stuff. But if you'd like to go to the theatre, well, you can't come back by bus. If you'd like to take your child to school, you're going to need a car. And if you want a job, you're definitely going to need to go by car. Like the last bus comes back from Maldon, it leaves Maldon before 5 o'clock. It's not a sustainable, in all senses of the word, location. It's sustainable for buying a loaf of bread and a pint of milk.
Did you want some answers to some
I'm
of your
going to leave it there because I think I've run out of breath. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Ball.
Thank you very much, Councillor. On the 2 conditions you raised, the bus stops, yes, we've used that previous one that was recommended. So the same one where rather than just have a condition requiring a bus stop, it will have to be submitted with details so that our Conservation and Heritage Officer can have a look at it within the context of the heritage assets. So that's already there. The construction vehicles on the 7.5 tonne limited roads, we've got a construction environmental management plan, which does include the need for construction traffic routing to be agreed, which will obviously go across to highways as well. I mean, we'd have to sort of get it cleared by the applicant whether we could add in something about roads not to be used or preferential use of other roads. I mean, it might be something we'd have to take away, because it might be unreasonable if there's a construction vehicle that's under 7.5 tonnes. What reasoning do we have for it not to use that? But we can have a discussion potentially about that, or we could go away and report back. But but then yes, accepted on the buses. Yeah, that's the frequency. I think I did look each direction, but yeah, I mean the point being, I think as we've said, is in terms of what quantifies as a sustainable location, this does meet the requirements. You know, I'm sure an inspector would find it to be a sustainable location. That's what we're basing it on and bringing it to you. And then the bus contribution for each scheme, so obviously the Obsidian to the south and this one, essentially amounts to an hourly bus Monday to Saturday, and then 2 hourly in evenings for 2 years, at which point it would be expected that service would then become viable if required. And Highways have come back and confirmed that if both schemes were to go forward, then they would seek that contribution for each, because it's each of those contributions is to offset the impact of the development. So there'd essentially be double that. That's how that works. What else were we? Safe walking, the footpath. I mean, yeah, we've gone through that. It doesn't need a crossing at the road. You know, it's one of those ones as well. If you were to go down, and I agree, we shouldn't, you know, be planning by appeal, but the reason we do look at appeal decisions is because, you know, members of the decision maker today, but you're not obviously the final decision maker on this application. There would be that 21-day period of referral, and then obviously the applicant has the right to appeal. So we, appeal decisions are material considerations. We give them significant weight where they're, similar schemes. So when you look forward to potentially that point, and bearing in mind everything is done in a tilted balance, if you were to, the reason, that there was originally that request for the primary school transport contribution was partly to do with confirmation that the public footpath would be extended along West Street. So that was confirmed, and then this document was produced, and then statutory consultees are happy with this document. As you said, you pointed out a few elements there where maybe, the white hashed line is potentially not, the best route, but in that instance, the southern side of East Road has pavement, so that could be used. And I think if you go down refuse on something like that, to put it into sort of black and white, there's nothing to stop ECC education from then just saying, okay, if you're now saying it's not accessible, the primary school transport contribution comes back. So it's, it's not really a determinative reason for refusal there, because obviously there are mitigation measures there, but they've confirmed they're happy with the route. So that's kind of, I know it's a little bit roundabout, but there's obviously a few stages there where we've got statutory consultees saying, we're happy with that route, we've looked at it, I've walked it, it's not the busiest road at times, it's a fairly short crossing. There are crossing points where you can get a pram through to the school, and that's why they withdrew that. Of course, but I mean, as was mentioned earlier, if we disagree on these points, we'll have to go away, we'll have to prepare our own evidence to go back on that. And there's nothing to stop ECC education from then just saying, well, okay, well then it's a financial contribution for transport.
Sorry, I've just got Councillor Durham wants to come in on that point.
Yeah, point taken. But if the education contribution from Essex County Council was £10 million, it's physically impossible to extend the width of the pavement because the width of the road, it is barely wide enough for, well, it isn't wide enough for two. And the other point is that and the point has just been made, yes, it is possible to push a pram or a buggy or whatever along that route, but not if you've got a child not of school age and you're walking with that other child. It's just, it isn't possible, it isn't safe. So what are people going to do? They're going to get in their cars, and during inclement weather and stuff, they're going to hop in their car and drive them to the school. That is if they're lucky enough to have got into Tollesbury School. And that is just going to further aggravate that pinch point there. So, I honestly don't think that there is a valid argument for any form of financial contribution to improve that footway, because there isn't enough, unless they manage to do a two-level road. It's just not feasible. So I think that we need to bear that in mind.
Thank you.
So the contribution would be for transport to be provided by the county for students rather than upgrades. There are some upgrades proposed. I think I've dropped in somewhere. So there are, annoyingly you can't see it, but there are works that will be secured to improve crossing points at this location, which may have been the crossroads you mentioned. Annoyingly you can't make it out on this screen, but that. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, the crossroads mentioned was the one by the pub, wasn't it? By the pub and the corner shop.
Yeah, can I clarify? So the crossroads you just showed us is by the GP's surgery. Well, if somebody thinks that needs improving, then that's lovely. But the crossroads I'm referring to is by the King's Head. So you've got the King's Head, you've got the Morrison's corner shop. What else is on that corner? The centre, which is, well, it's what it says it is. It's a centre. Lots of stuff happens in there. So all of the developers' pictures show the western end of West Street, and it all looks beautiful, sunlit boulevard with trees and everything. But as you come into the medieval part of the village, you are rubbing shoulders with the HGVs because the road is so narrow there right next to the curb. They keep knocking bits of the curb off, and you've only got this 67 centimetres. Now, okay, you can get past that, even if we accept that, you're then crossing. Now, it's shown in both of those pictures. In the left-hand picture, you're crossing this side of the bay window that you can just see sticking out into the road. So you would tell your child, stay on the right-hand side of the road until you get past that bay window and then cross. Now, where you're standing, where the photographer is standing, they are in the crossroads. So you are telling your child, cross the road in the mouth of a crossroads. It's a long time since I did Tufty, but I'm sure I wasn't taught that.
I mean, there is just to the left of that, obviously, you can cut into Church Road. Then there's that island that has dropped curb on both sides where there'd be one crossing point onto the island inside of the bus stops and then cross again. And I mean, it's ever so slightly within.
I live there. I've just done it this morning. I nearly got run over for my pains. That was just unlucky. That's not going to happen to a child every day. But it is, you would not tell a child or an adult, cross over the road in a crossroads. And I tried it, and the tiny little bit of pavement that you can see on the left-hand side there had somebody in it, so there wasn't anywhere for me to go when I even got across the road, because it's a very tiny bit of pavement. It just doesn't work, and I don't think we've got the right evidence in front of us.
Yes, I've got the second time round. Thank you. I think we need to move on if that's possible. Thank you. I've got the second time around us now. Councillor Fluker, can I help?
So, I mean, before it was just really a point of clarity. I mean, this is very interesting where we're going to on education. I mean, first of all, maybe the officers can confirm they've clearly the applicant has clearly given all the officers the information for them to make a well-informed decision on the cumulative effect of all the developments in Tollesbury. I think it's right and proper to understand from the members' perspective that they don't support that. And it concerns me enormously with regards to health and safety issues. We had this at an appeal lately whereby the KC for Gladman's, on behalf of the applicant at Spratt's Farm, basically said the road was safe, and I explained to him that it wasn't. If anyone got seriously injured or worse, they would be responsible for corporate manslaughter. And I think that set the hairs running. And this is the same sort of situation. You're playing with people's lives here, Mr. Ward. I mean, you know, you've been there. We've heard what the ward member has said. We've also heard what Highways has said, but based on the information that's been supplied by the applicant. But just to focus minds, Highways have taken into consideration the cumulative effect of the developments in Tollesbury, but I don't see anywhere in the report where education and healthcare have specifically done that. Yes, of course, they want their Section 106, they want their holding objection bought off, and that's all it is. So my first question, I've only got a couple. Were education and healthcare reconsulted after the Obsidian scheme was approved?
Yes.
So I don't see that in the report. I apologise if I've missed it, but I would have expected to see it in the amendment, but I didn't see it in there. So they were, and they are still happy. So I think, members, where we are with this is that it's very, very difficult to go against what the statutory consultees say, although clearly based on the evidence from members, there is certainly something wrong with Highways. And I always think that just sometimes when we've got these issues, it would be good to have an alternative view, a formal view which forms part of the papers and is circulated. You know, we often get told, oh, we spoke to someone, we spoke to an independent Highways person and they said that there wasn't an issue. But, Chairman, I've visited Tollesbury. I visit Tollesbury a lot. I go by boat because every time I go by car, I can't get down to the industrial estate, and that's without all the houses. I'm sure that in accordance with the advice from the TPA and PINS, all members have visited this site. I mean, that's the advice that comes from PINS and the TPA, that we actually do that. So I went there last week, and I mean, it's quite extraordinary. You go into Old Tollesbury, small old village, sleepy old village, you've got a big development coming on one side, and now you've got this. I mean, the impact on, you know, we're supposed to be protecting the overall amenity of the entrances to villages as a whole. In my mind, it does not comply with policy D14. And I think you know, if you think about this, I guess that policy H4 applies as well with regards to the cumulative and the density of the development that's already approved in this one, and what's actually occurring on the ground. And I actually think that as elected members, we've got every right to object if we can do it on either policy or subjective grounds. But Chairman, to play devil's advocate, if nobody supported the officer's recommendation and nobody voted against it, one would presume this matter would be dealt with by non-determination. And if a hearing was held, then that would give the opportunity to all members to express their views quite clearly, as they have done today, and give the opportunity for 400 members of the public to address the planning inspector. So that's my thoughts, Chairman.
Thank you. Right, we're on second time round now, so I'm going to ask you everyone to be brief, please. Go, Councillor Morley.
It was covered with Councillor Stevens. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Stamp.
Thank you, Chair. Mine's only a quick one, really. Mine's sort of saying if members are minded to approve it, and I understand on page 47 it is a reserve matters, but I think could we, at that stage, in case we don't have a say on it, you know, I have a thing about parks to be for all, for disabled children, adults, children with special needs. Can we make sure, yet again, we don't have the springy chickens and we have the interactive parks, which we've luckily now got in Burnham? And I'd like to thank, I'd like to thank this authority for listening and actually addressing that we have actually worked towards to delivering for everybody in our community. And I also support the condition about construction vehicles. When we had all our development in Burnham, they used to run the construction vehicles and the heavy goods, even though we'd got a similar weight limit to what Councillor Stevens said, and it was chaotic. And I myself, even in that great big bus that I used to drive, was forced off the road by construction vehicles coming in the wrong area. And it wasn't made clearly, and I reported it, and nothing ever got done. And what if there's a road like this, they use it as a rat run, and there's always some issue. So I do think if we could put a condition of that nature, I know you said it couldn't, but I think we can, especially if there is a danger to people on those smaller single track roads. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, Mr. Jaggard.
I was just, on one hand, just trying to hopefully add a helpful comment to the comment from Councillor Stamp. I think, just building on what Mr. Ball said earlier, if members were minded to recommend granting planning permission subject to conditions and the legal agreement, members could delegate to me to work with the applicant and in consultation with the chair and the ward members to see whether, and obviously the highway authority, see if there was a condition which could be dealt with. I'm not saying it could, and I fully take on board the risks that Mr. Ball's highlighted, but it may be that some or all of those roads could be conditioned like that, and I'm happy if members wanted delegating me to do that exploration on the basis that if we didn't have grounds and weren't able to do so, then I would have the power not to put that condition in, but I'm happy to explore that one if that's where we get to with the recommendations. Hopefully that's helpful.
Okay. Councillor Fittick in a moment. I've got Councillor Paula Spenceley first, and then I'll come back to you.
Before we go to any vote on this, Chair, I'd like to say to planning officers, and they're going to know where I'm coming from on this, with regards to the construction management plan, that if this goes ahead, please can we be very sure that we have the best possible plan in place to protect residents. As you know, we have residents in Haybridge who have endured absolutely unacceptable conditions for an extended period of time. I read here about the medieval cottages behind, etc. I can only imagine the level of damage that could happen if we don't really make sure we've absolutely. Councillor Fittock's done a lot of research on these, Councillor Spenceley similarly, So I hope that that will be taken into account, and really we need to be very tight on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Just to put it on the record, yeah, so it's condition 34 is the children's play-based equipment, and yeah, so if members were minded to grant, you could obviously, that could be subject to tweaking that for it to be accessible to all. And then I have seen a discussion on this in terms of the construction traffic routing, that it shouldn't go down Colchester Road, Chapel Road, Back Road or North Road, when you were saying about the particular roads. So yeah, we can explore that. And then if you look at condition 9 in the report, it's quite a robust construction environmental management plan condition, put a lot of aspects into there. So yeah, hopefully it's robust. It's certainly, I think, certainly a lot stronger and a lot more information required than potentially some more dated conditions. So we're satisfied that there's enough there.
Thank you. Councillor Fittock. There's one behind you.
Thank you, Chair. I would agree with Councillor Spencer. Obviously, the dust problems we're having both in Latchton and Heybridge are not pleasant, shall we say, from a resident perspective, and I'm sure officers will be looking at the CMP and making sure that we have proper ways of managing that moving forward. I mean, I've listened to the debate very, very carefully, and I've heard lots of reasons and lots of problems with the location, and I think that will be echoed pretty much wherever we go across the district. What I haven't heard is anything that I would regard as being, if you like, something we could argue with as a reason for refusal in terms of outweighing the benefit of development as far as the government policy and or the tilted balance is. So I will be honest, I really, really do not like departure from local development plans, but at the end of the day, thanks to the government, we haven't got a plan, have we? We've got the NPPF to measure ourselves against. So therefore, I am sort of going to propose, and it's not with any warmth, that we accept the officer's recommendation and grant consent to this development. Do I have a seconder?
Is that seconded?
I'll second.
Councillor Morgan seconded that. So I have got Councillor Stevens to speak again. Councillor Flicker. Okay, recorded. Is that seconded, the recorded vote? Sorry, are you seconding that as well as speak? Okay, Councillor Stevens.
I don't agree that we can't prove that the harms outweigh the benefits. We saw one of the slides up there shows the columns of harms and benefits. Maybe you could bring that back up. I think planning departments seem to move in strange ways, shall we say, mysterious ways. One of the benefits, so for a start, we lump 3 harms at the bottom left there together as one bullet, whereas on the right-hand side, we break out the benefits into separate items. And that, if you tried to attach some numbers to this and, gave limited a 1 and significant a 3 and all that sort of thing, you would need to list those separately. It doesn't feel right to me to do it like that. And there are some benefits on there that wouldn't exist if you didn't build this. So new communal open space. Well, we don't need any new communal open space if we don't have this housing. Where are we? Job creation. Well, that's only temporary, so you could just as well put on the other side, on the harms side, the harms that we've just heard about of the construction. Creating green infrastructure. Well, we've already got, it's an open field, we've already got green infrastructure. Sustainable construction. Well, if you don't construct it, then that's quite sustainable as well. So those things don't really seem to, they're kind of non-benefits. There are policies that this would breach. And a minute ago, I had a list of them. Planning officers, you'll have to help me out here because I've only written down some of the paragraph numbers. I might need help with the wording, but I think this breaches NPPF paragraph 129 and 110. I think it breaches RLDP, T1, sustainable transport, and T2, accessibility. there's other members might have other thoughts on what it breaches. I still find that the harms outweigh the benefits to the extent that we should not be approving this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, we have a proposal on the table now, that duly seconded. So, oh, Councillor Stamp?
There's the opposite advice, because the thing I said, don't forget the one at the opposite side of the road has been approved. I'm concerned, and can I have some professional advice? Do you think, in your opinion, that because there is a precedent now being set, and I know you haven't taken my arguments about the community, which is what I feel strongly about, because it is a village and it is going to go up to 47% if it all goes through, but is that precedent now, if it went to appeal, would the inspector turn around and say that the precedent has been set, or would he look or she look at the community with the evidence, what Councillor Stevens is saying?
Mr Jaggard?
I will start, but I'm happy for any of my colleagues to jump in and support me on elements on this. I'm starting with the point that every application is considered on its own merits. Looking at this and the merits of this application, or the issues around this application, for and against, have been set out in the report and debated and explored quite a lot tonight. If it went to appeal, the inspector would look at the merits for this one, but there will potentially the appellant in that case might look at whether the council was being unreasonable in doing so, and in terms of being unreasonable and trying to go for an award of costs, might consider previous decisions made by the council and whether this one seemed unreasonable in the light of it, and in light of other planning appeal decisions. That is the sort of risk to it, but there is no, we're always very clear, you're not setting a precedent by decisions, but you are setting an expectation that you're going to make consistent decisions based on the merits of applications.
Thank you. Very briefly, please, Councillor Stevens. We do have a proposal to vote on.
Very briefly then, just to say that the key difference between the two sites is walking into the village. In the site that we agreed in June, you can walk into the village, I won't bore people with road names, but quite safely, no problem, and you can't from this site.
Thank you. Councillor Morgan?
Yeah, just through you, Chair, quick clarification. Am I right in saying that this recommendation, were we to approve, is subject to the Section 106 being agreed within 3 months?
Yes.
Could perhaps the officer just expand on that?
Yes, Mr Jaggard, please.
Yes, so the expectation is, and I'm getting the right bit of the paragraph, that it delegates to me to get the Section 106 agreed within 3 months. Obviously, if it wasn't, we would have to consider what we do next and whether we need an extension of time. But I think the conversation we had at a previous district plan committee was very much tied around, actually, if it's going to have a material effect on the 5-year land supply, we don't want these agreements tied up in 106 legal debates for too long, and therefore that 3 months was imposed on that one, and it's been captured in this recommendation as well.
Thank you.
Should I just clarify? We have on this one, because that one had no room for an extension of time. We have spoken to legal, and obviously you put yourself in a situation where there's something, because obviously council will be party to that agreement. If council are being slow and we go over that 3 months and we then refuse the application and we go to appeal, the appellant, I would imagine, would be looking for costs from an inspector saying, why has this been appealed when I've been completely compliant? So we have recommended the 3 months reduced from 6 months, but we have recommended an EOT extension of time, to be agreed to that period. The applicant did mention that if committee wanted more security, maybe there could be an additional agreement there, maybe the extension of time in agreement with the chair and vice chair or something like that, where there is the sort of that extra element of member oversight, rather than obviously, it just being agreed by officers.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hayward?
I'll try and keep it quick. It was just obviously we've already had one application go through, and this is the second one. And obviously, when these both go through, are we going to have a problem with a glut of houses that don't actually sell? And this could be another thing where we get a lot of houses in that area that are just going to be sitting there, very much like the Burnham Waters, actually, if you want to bring it out like that, where they're not selling.
That is
It won't add to the 5-year land supply that way.
Thank you. Councillor Jennings.
Thank you, Chair. Just a bit of clarity from officers, if you wouldn't mind. It's regarding Anglia Water. Has Anglia Water assessed the cumulative impact of approximately all of the applications, this one, the approved one, and the other potential, on local sewer networks and receiving wastewater treatment works? In addition to that, where it says on page 69, the name of the statutory consultation, under Essex County Fire and Rescue Service, there is an excessive distance to the nearest existing statutory fire hydrant. Additional hydrants should therefore be installed within the site. But the only advice is if the development is approved. Are we not seeking to see whether Anglia Water can provide suitable fire hydrants on all of these sites cumulatively? Or do we have to wait until they're approved as to see whether somebody can put out a fire in their own home? Thanks.
Yeah, on that one, so that's obviously that agreement that the Fire and Rescue Service mentioned is between them and Anglian Water outside, so it's something that they'll obviously initiate, much like with some of these other elements, you know, the sustainable point of connection, that's something that sits outside planning. So in that instance, if the application was approved, then it's up to the developer to then go to Anglian Water. There's a whole other set of regulations they need to go through, where they need to connect to whatever point it is. We do have that planning condition on that, obviously, about the foul water drainage strategy, but it's the same with this, where that would be then for the applicant, fire service and Anglian Water to discuss. If it would give more security, I mean, subject to the applicant agreeing, I don't see the harm in adding a planning condition. You know, obviously, guidance does recommend against sort of duplicating other legislation, but I mean, it might be one for discussion if that is a sticking point. Anglian Water didn't get back on the cumulative impact. They essentially just look at each site, but as I said earlier, they're obligated to address the flows as the statutory water provider, and that lies with them. And you know, we've seen in appeals recently sort of how it's gone when we've tried to introduce that, and inspectors haven't accepted it.
Can we put some pressure on Anglia Water to actually respond to this? Because I do think it's quite important in terms of the whole application that that they respond, because it's vital. The water supply and the receiving wastewater treatment works have to be valid for all of these applications, so we need that response, really.
Councillor, sorry.
I think that we can't force people to respond in a certain time. I think, as Mr. Ball has said, under, I think it's the Water Act, when the private water companies were set up, they have an obligation to supply water, and therefore they aren't able to maintain objections and turn up at appeals. So if we refuse on water connection grounds, when there's a connection charge, we wouldn't have the water company able to sit up and appeal with us. In terms of the potential for a condition around the fire hydrant, I could suggest that got added to the list of matters which we could talk to the applicants about if there was a minded to, with the same caveat that actually if we can't get that agreed with the fire service and the applicant, then it's within my remit to withdraw that as a condition, but I'm happy to explore that if that was the details to be picked up.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stevens, I think, to finish off, I think.
Thank you. Sorry, I wasn't going to say anything else, but just a point of accuracy that our water supplier is Essex and Suffolk, so they would, I think, deliver any fire hydrant. The people who take the other end away is Anglian Water.
Right.
But it's rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, talking about all these conditions.
Thank you. So, the proposal is to agree the officer's recommendation. Can those...
Can I have a call for a recorded vote, please?
Yes, of course. Sorry. Thank you for reminding me. Mr. Bowles, are you ready for a recorded vote?
Just give me 10 seconds, please.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to read each councillor's name out in order, and if you could just answer for, against, or abstain, please.
Okay.
Okay, this is for approval of the officer's recommendation. Councillor Bassinger.
Abstain.
Sorry, I couldn't hear that. Could you repeat that?
Abstain.
Councillor Bell.
Not here.
Councillor Bound.
Not here.
Not here.
Councillor Burwood.
Abstain.
Councillor Durham.
I'm afraid I agree with Mrs. Councillor Fittock. Agree.
Councillor Fittock. Councillor Fluker.
Against policy D1, thank you.
Councillor Hayward.
Against.
Councillor Hughes.
Against.
I couldn't hear that one.
Against.
Against. Councillor Jennings.
Against.
Against. Councillor Morgan.
For.
Councillor Morley.
Against.
Councillor Siddle Norman.
Against.
Sorry, I couldn't hear that one.
That was against.
Against, thank you. Councillor Nick Spenceley.
For.
Councillor Paula Spenceley.
Against.
Was that for or against? Sorry.
That was against.
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 Councillor Stamp.
Against.
Councillor Stevens.
Against.
Councillor Swindle.
Against.
Councillor Thompson.
Sorry, abstain as I'm in the chair.
Councillor Whiffen. Apologies, I can't hear that one either.
That was against.
Against.
Okay, sorry about all the sound issues. So, after the count's been taken, we have 4 for the proposal, 11 against the proposal, and 3 abstaining.
Thank you. So that is not granted. However, we need another proposal to do something different, presumably refuse it, and that needs to come with reasons for refusal. So I'm looking at members.
Well, Chairman, I would propose that the application is refused. I'm sure that Councillor Stevens has more policy reasons than I do, but principally on policy D1 and I think policy H4 as well. So that would be my view. Thank you. I'll second Councillor Stevens if you wish to add anything else. But I think also, for the benefit of the tape, who I'm sure if this goes well, I think it will go to, the inspector will be listening to me right now. And I think that the members have grave concerns over highways. And I think they've demonstrated beyond reasonable doubt that the information on which this local planning authority is basing its advice could well be flawed.
Mr. Jaggard.
I think, and trying to positively support members through their thought process here, it is clear, as was explored in the debate, the competent authority for highway matters is Essex Highway Authority, who are also the competent authority for education, and they have not raised an objection. Therefore, and we've heard how that was taken into account at sites like the Maldon Woods appeal and the weight given to the statutory authority on those matters. So I urge caution on that and the risk of how that is considered and any appeal for costs future in relation to reasons for refusal which aren't based or are contrary to the statutory authority's position. And in terms of the reasons for refusal, while officers will always try to help frame reasons for refusal in a way that can be defended, or to put reasons for refusal into planning terms, because members are non-technical, non-experts, non-qualified RTPI planners, but we're always here to support and work collaboratively. I do need a little bit more than policy D1 and H4 in terms of the reasons for refusal. And if it did go down to a reason for refusal and appeal, we'd also need named experts who'd be willing to turn up at a public inquiry and defend the reasons for refusal.
Chairman, there's a procedural thing here about referring to the Secretary of State.
Yes.
Can I ask a question about the safety issue? I do not think we've addressed the actual safety issue at that junction. We all know that Essex County Council Highways, and I mentioned it last night at the briefing with Arup, have got no intention, despite a lot of pressure, of attending any appeal hearings here. Now, I think it would be really good if we could get some pressure, and you've always been very supportive, that we do actually get hold of Essex County Council Highways or Adam Pipe or whoever it is who designs the junctions, because it was proven quite clearly that that junction is dangerous. And I don't go that way much, Madam Chair, but I think that junction is an absolute nightmare when I'm in my car. Never mind asking little Johnny or Jenny, who's got to walk across it to go wherever they want or go to the village. So is there anything we could actually do, Mr. Jaggard, regarding a safety issue? Because it's all right them saying they're not going to appear. It's not a problem. They did the same in Burnham. On the past 3 weekends, we've had 3 accidents at the junction. A woman was knocked off a bike. We had another one where a scooter scooted round and there was nearly a head-on. And then the other one, there was an actual accident in the space of 3 weeks, because highways don't listen. And we are still responsible here. So I do think we have got to get in there and get them to do something. I'm sorry, I'm ranting, but it's a serious issue with safety.
Mr. Jaggard.
While I hear what Councillor Stamp says, I am aware that Councillor Stamp, as she just said, is also a county council member, and I know you've actively raised that as a county council member with your colleagues and with officers. And despite all that, we are getting the responses from this that they say it is their professional opinion that there isn't a reason for refusal on this scheme. I'm not sure I've got much more to add to that, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Paula Spenceley.
Yeah, it's just kind of to reiterate that, because if I'm really honest, and I'm speaking now as a human being, so call me soft because I'm just supposed to have the planning hat on, but I always try to do what I think ultimately is right, and I cannot vote for something where I believe a child will be potentially killed on a road. And that is, you know, taking all the technical jargon and everything else out of it, that is a problem that I think needs to... Is there any way we could defer for some sort of, you know, correspondence with highways? I don't know what, but is it possible we could at least defer for that advice? Because we did go actually down to Tollesbury a couple of weeks ago. I was already really worried from looking at that road, and seeing that photo of it didn't help. and I think listening to Councillor Emma Stevens here is another thing, because she lives there and she understands and she's walked the route. I, in my own ward, have a problem that makes me lose sleep with a path that I know is dangerous for children to get to school. And it's actually, let me just point something out quickly, and why it's caused this is because it's one thing to say it's going to put more cars on the road. I know when you're talking about affordable housing and other elements of housing, people won't all have cars and they will walk down that road. And, you know, from a human point of view, that's my problem with it.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Ball, yes, do.
One thing, because I know we still need to gather the potential reasons for refusal before going to that. But one major concern I had just with that point is just you know, with an eye on appeal would be obviously the County Council Education's initial position when they didn't think there was a highways access before they saw that additional information, which members aren't happy with, I get that. But their initial position was there's no connection, 1.2-ish million pounds contribution towards a school transport bus service. That's fine, no objection. So my only a sort of major worry if we went to appeal on that issue with the connection is it's very easy for county to say, maybe they changed their mind, maybe they wouldn't, but then that could just default to that initial position where they weren't happy that a safe route was demonstrated, but they were supportive subject to that extra 1.2-ish million pound contribution. So, I mean, that seems a bit risky. I mean, if that's largely the basis, I know there's other things and we still need to flesh it out, but if that forms one of the,
Did Essex County Council say that?
Say what, sorry?
About the litigation from the school for the highways. But what you've just said, as I understand it, didn't you just say that they could turn around and say the contribution outweighs the risk of the road, the highways?
So it would be a separate, so their initial comments were, there is no route, so nobody's walking, that's why they need to pay for the primary school transport bus service. Then the applicant pushed back on that and said, actually, there is this route, that route, so they took it away. But obviously, yeah.
Sorry, not across the floor, please. Yes, Mr. Juggle.
I think I'm picking up on the suggestion for Councillor Bensley. So if I rerun where we've got to today, the motion to approve the application in front of us wasn't carried, and if I'm summarising how I've seen the Nights Committee correctly, members were concerned about pavement access and safe routes to schools at the junction, and some issues around which we've touched on about whether or not haul routes could be protected on things like Colchester Road, the water supply, and the fire hydrants, and a couple of other matters. If I'm reading the room correctly, and I'm trying to, again, reflect on Councillor Fluker's comments, members may choose to defer the application and ask officers to explore matters around safe routes to schools, may ask us to do about the highway access, and see if we can resolve matters around the fire hydrant and the haul route agreement. That would seem sense to give officers the opportunity to review those matters and pick up the matters here and bring it back to a future committee where some of the matters that were raised about seeking further clarity from Essex County Council on highways and what they took into account can be taken, and we can bring that as addendum to this report and have it reconsidered.
Okay.
Is that that is a suggestion of a way forward, Chair?
Just going to go to Councillor Fluker.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, yeah, look, Chairman, I mean, there are other issues with this because, I mean, the MPPF, I think paragraph 129, cautions against permission if adverse impacts on services and infrastructure. Now, we've heard about the schools, and paragraph 10, I think it is 110, isn't it? Which I think you've written here. It's the one where you're supposed to limit the time and travel to get to places like schools, and we've heard now about putting 4-year-old children on buses, taking them to Haybridge, probably taking them to Tiptree and places like that. And the other ghastly thing about this is the parents aren't allowed to travel on those buses because the buses go back to their depots. I mean, you really are, you know, from a social point of view, you've got a responsibility here. So I think 110 kicks in. Our own LDP, I mean, you've got T1, which is sustainable transport, and I think when you talk about this and the way it's been coloured up, buses every half an hour, but that's not quite right. It's disappointing that we haven't drilled into that more. And then, of course, we've got policy L1 to fall back on, which deals with infrastructure generally, which we picked up on. And D1, I mean, D1, first part of D1, I think it's D11, it talks about the need, you know, all developments must respect and enhance the character and local context. We're building these houses at the entrance. I don't care what's on the other side of the road, but because then you've got both then. Does that enhance it? It's bad enough having one lot, which I understand is subject to a judicial review anyway. Good luck with that. But you've got one lot on one side of the road. Now you've got this. You've got all this other stuff going on. So when you bring it all together, does it really enhance the character and local context and make a positive contribution? Very subjective. But I'm sure members will happily argue that with an inspector. So, Chairman, I think you've got all of those things. I hear what Mr Jaggard says, and of course he will, of course, act in what he considers to be the best interest of the local planning authority. But, of course, that said, if Mr Jaggard is going to go away and he calls for this to be deferred, and I would not support that, I think if members were minded, then they should ask Mr Jaggard to provide independent advice in relation to the matters that members have raised, and also give members access to those consultants, because it's often the case that we hear, oh, I've been out to 10 consultants and none of them are prepared to defend the position of the council. And I think often it's because the in-depth knowledge of members isn't imparted. But as I said, I wouldn't support that.
Mr Jaggard.
I think we're moving to a place that if it's not deferred by members, I will have to call a constitutional break on this one.
Okay.
I would prefer members to choose to defer. There's a lot. I won't respond to all the comments and positions that Councillor Fuka raised, because I think we've already heard exactly from Councillor Fittock the position we are in with the housing numbers, and that actually then a housing numbers are imposed on what was a rural district, a Maldon district, and the numbers are pushing us into a different place, and the character is changing. So, through you, Chair, if members aren't happy to defer, I'll call I'll ask for a constitutional break to bring it back. And what I'd like to do is bring it back in a month's time, because I think if we go through the process of procuring independent transport consultants come through, we're probably talking at least 3 months before they're procured and the evidence done, and I think that would lead to potentially a non-determination appeal. And I think we have the evidence through Essex Highways as the experts and the statutory authority on this one. What I took from members was there were further questions they would like explored with Highways, and we can do that and come back in a month's time and revisit this application at that stage.
Chairman, for clarity, I mean, I think Mr Jaggard's missed my point. I mean, the point of this is to allow members the opportunity to speak to one of these consultants so that they can clearly express their views. Because I'm sure that, you know, even by listening to the tape, you won't pick up on the in-depth knowledge that Councillor Stevens has laid before this planning committee this evening. And I think it's really, really important, because it's clear from other appeals we're not transmitting the information from the ground to our, to our specialists that we might appoint. And I think this is missed. And I'm afraid Essex County Council, we know, are not the be-all and end-all on highways.
Okay. I've got Councillor Fittock.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, obviously, members, we have to do what we consider right as a majority, and I'm quite happy to support that. All I do is say that whatever reasons we come up for refusal, if we're going to say it's because of highway safety, i.e. lack of pavements to the school, then we're going to have to evidence that, and we're going to have to disagree with Essex County Council Education if they regard it's appropriate. But as Mr Bull said, the simple way out of that would be to say that a transport contribution is required, so therefore there is no safe route problem, is there? I mean, if we were to use any kind of infrastructure reasons for a reason refusal, I would suggest that I could refer you to appeals that I've attended where I've argued these points, and the council's argued these points, and the inspectors basically just say, well, fine, we understand what you're saying, Councillor Bidot, but you have no evidence that the education won't provide the school places. You have no evidence that they won't spend the money to increase the number of school places. You have no evidence substantiate that they will be going to a different school and different location in Tiptree. And unless you can provide that evidence, then there is no evidence. So really, it just becomes an opinion. I mean, I could go on, but all I'm saying is that whatever reasons we cite, and we found this at the Southminster appeal, we listed reasons for refusal, and the election appeal, reasons for refusal that we then had to withdraw because we couldn't find any evidence to support those reasons. So we can say what we want as members. We can come up with the most plausible reasons possible that sound fantastic to everybody. But when it comes down to presenting evidence, that's a different matter altogether. So whatever we decide to refuse it on, we have to be sure that we can provide robust evidence that significantly and demonstrably outweighs the benefit of the development. I'm not concerned about whether or not we have going to special, if you like, petitions and that. It's really about, are we making sensible decisions as a council? Because all I'm saying is that the longer we kick things down the road in terms of granting consents, the longer we're not going to have a 5-year housing land supply, the more it leaves the door open to speculative development, because we have a cut-off point each year of April. And if it consented to in April, will benefit us next year. If it overrolls to next year, then it becomes the next year's AMR. The developers will love this in the long run because they know they'll end up getting consent via appeal. Landowners will love it because the longer they can keep us without a 5-year housing land supply, the better off they'll be. So we just have to be mindful of the bigger picture. Is if we're not certain, if we haven't got good reasons, then I won't support the reasons. If we have good reasons, I will go along with the majority and I will support the good reasons, but only under those circumstances, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Jennings withdrawing. So, Mr. Jaggard, you've called a constitutional break.
I think I have to here, Chair. So I'd hope for a member of choice 2 a deferral, but I think given where we are, I think I need to do a constitutional break, work with that to collect more evidence and speak to the highways authorities and bring it back in. I know we've got a lot of stuff coming on to district planning in the future, but try to get this on in a month or 6 weeks.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, Councillor Stamp.
Yeah, I think Councillor Spenceley, I don't care which one of us does it. Thank you. I would like to propose we defer it.
Okay, we have a proposal to defer.
I guess you just by assent.
So, can we agree that by assent? No.
Show of hands, I think.
I think
Can
we
we
need
just
a show
give
of
a few
hands.
more details as to exactly how long we're deferring it?
Yeah, Mr. Jaggard.
I will try to check my scribbles. Before we moved into the position of trying to find reasons for refusal, the areas seemed to focus a lot on safe routes to schools and transport in the area, with secondary reasons, if I put it that way, around how would matters such as a fire hydrant be delivered. Given how I read the room, that without those matters having a satisfactory solution, which could be presented to committee today, members felt they couldn't support the application as presented members and in a positive way as a whole, because there were still outstanding questions about safe routes to school, how that would be delivered, infrastructure. In delaying it and bringing it back in a month or 6 weeks' time, it allows us to have further in-depth conversations with the local education authority, with the local highway authority, talk to fire service about delivering the hydrants, and look at whether those matters could be resolved. At the same time, we could look at, if they aren't resolved, what a reason for refusal might be. I must admit I'm struggling on that at the moment, but it gives us a chance to have a look at those and seek external advice as well.
Can I just, sorry, Chair, can I just come back? And would that put us open to a possible appeal for non-determination?
Yes, it would.
Okay.
So, Chairman, for clarity, is Mr Jaggard saying that it's also going to explore the reasons that I put forward to refuse it, which were MPPF 129, paragraph 110, our own LDP T1, T2 and D1, and L1 as well. I'll happily share those with you, Mr Jaggard, bearing in mind the lateness of the day.
Thank you. Mr Jackal?
So I think where we were, there was a recommendation for a deferral, a motion, and it was seconded.
And it was seconded, which the proposal to refuse actually wasn't.
Yeah. So therefore, I think you were asking for a second. I wasn't sure if there had been sent around the room.
Well, I'm not sure, so we're going to have a show of hands. Those in favour of a deferral, please show. Anyone against? I'm abstaining. Okay, so we have a deferral. So, members, thank you very much for your contributions, and officers. So, I'm going to close the meeting at 9:47. Thank you.